metric system is a lot like the decimal system in that it's based around the number 10. For any unit, if you have 10 of those units, we're talking about units of length at the moment, if you have 10 of those units, you have a new unit, a new name. The base unit for length is the metre with the letter M. And if I had 10 metres, the unit for 10 metres is called a decametre. And if I had 10 decametres, I would have 1 hectometre. That's 100 metres. And if I had 10 hectometres, that's 1,000 metres. That's a kilometre. Now, going back the other way, and it goes on and on, you can get larger and larger units going off in that direction. Going the other way, if I broke my metre up into 10 pieces, one of those lengths would be called a decimetre. And it's written like that. If I broke my decimetre up into 10 pieces, that would be a centimetre. It's 100 centimetres in a metre. And if I broke my centimetre up into 10 pieces, a quick look at that ruler, between 4 and 5 centimetres, see all those little lines? Those are millimetres. If I broke my centimetre up into 10 pieces, that would be called a millimetre. Now, usually in conversation, we only talk about millimetres, metres, centimetres, and millimetres, and we don't talk about those other units that are in between them. Or generally, unless we're scientists, we don't talk about the units that are much, much smaller either. But the units exist, and they might help to make sense of the fact that when we're converting from kilometres to metres, we multiply by 1,000. And it's because we're going 3 steps, we're jumping a couple of units there. And that's why we multiplied by 1,000. But if I was going from kilometres to hectometres, I'd be multiplying by 10. And if, I hope you can see the mouse, if I was going from kilometres to hectometres, I'd multiply by 10. And if I was going from hectometres to decametres, I'd multiply by 10. And then decametres to metres, I'd multiply by 10. But because I've skipped a couple of units there, kilometres to metres is 1,000. So if I'm going from metres to decimetres, I'd multiply by 10. But if I go from metres to centimetres, I'm going to multiply by 100. And centimetres to millimetres, that's just 1 step, and I multiply by 10. And the same thing going back the other way. Now, often in your textbooks, you see these little, I think they're called caterpillars. You see these caterpillars where you go times 1,000, times 100, times 10, and they don't show you the units in between. So I just want you to understand that going from kilometres to metres, you're multiplying by 1,000 because you're skipping a couple of units that we don't usually worry about or talk about. And I tend to, instead of just writing what you see in textbooks, you write kilometre, you write metre, you write centimetre, and you write millimetre, and then you put those little arrows there. I tend to write this with all the units, and I know that I'm just multiplying by 10 as I move from one unit to the next. Well, not just multiplying by 10, but moving my decimal point in whatever direction I'm going in units. If I'm going kilometres to metres, I'm moving my decimal point in that direction 1, 2, 3 spaces. If I'm going from centimetres to metres, I move my decimal point in that direction 1, 2 spaces. And I just count spaces to convert from one unit to another. I'll give you an example. So, see what I mean. Here we go. 5 centimetres equals how many millimetres? Millimetres. And the decimal point is after the 5 there because 5 is in the ones place. So going from centimetres to millimetres, I am going in that direction 1 step. So I need to move my decimal point that direction 1 step. And I've got 50 millimetres. So I don't think about it as multiplying and dividing. I think about it as moving my decimal point and I count how many spaces I've got to move it. 300 centimetres to metres. So to get from centimetres to metres, I start here. and I move back 1, 2 spaces. My decimal point from the end of the number goes back 1, 2 spaces, and the answer would be 3 meters. If I'm doing 7.63 kilometers to meters, my decimal point is starting just after the 7, and it is moving in that direction 1, 2, 3 spaces. 1, 2, 3 spaces, and obviously I'm going to have to put a 0 where that is. So it's going to be 7,630 meters. Now that's one way of doing it. You can use the caterpillars. The caterpillar that looks like that you get in the book. You can use a table like this sort of thing that tells you how many of one unit there is in another kind of unit. Or you can just draw this, and I don't even draw all of that. I write just the first letters, K, H, D, D here, C there, and M there. And then I just go, oh, meters there, and kilometers to meters, I move my decimal point 1, 2, 3 places. Centimeters to meters, I move my decimal point backwards 1, 2 places, and I just count like that. Now, the other thing is that because the metric system works for all different kinds of units, not just length, this works for mass as well. Instead of M for meter, I would use the basic unit of mass, which is a gram, and I'd put a gram there. And then if I wanted to go from grams to milligrams, I would move my decimal point 1, 2, 3 spaces to get to there. Or if I wanted to go from grams to kilograms, I would move my decimal point backwards 1, 2, 3 spaces. This works the same for units of information called bits, or I think it's called bits, bytes, something like that. Bytes. Decabyte, there's a decabyte, there's a hectabyte, there's a kilobyte. We don't usually worry about these tiny little pieces of them. We go back this way, we go to gigabytes and terabytes, which are back over here in this direction somewhere. But the same, no matter what you are measuring, you can use the same, the metric system works exactly the same way. That is a base unit with a deca, hectare, a kilo, and whatever goes on before that, and a deci, and a centi, and a milli. So instead of writing meters here, I don't put an M there. I put an O with a line through it, which means to me base unit. So if we're talking about length, that is meter. If we're talking about mass, that is grams. And then I just use this thing here for any kind of metric conversions. I just, oh, my pen's going silly. I just scribble it at the top of the page, and I use it to count how many spaces to move my decimal point. When I started school, my year 8 teacher taught me a mnemonic to remember how to write it down. Kids have dropped over a dead converting metric. And I just write that down like that at the top of my page, and I count how many places to move my decimal point from one to another. You're welcome to use that. You are also okay with using this, and you're also okay with using that. Here are some examples for you to have a go at. Okay, so have a go at those ones, and we'll do the answers. And there's some answers for you. All right, go and convert some units.